Friends, it's a pleasure to welcome one of my old friends, Professor Shuji Uchikawa. He is currently a professor at Senshu University, but I got to know him when he was a very senior researcher at Institute for Institute for Developing Economies, based in Chiba, in near Tokyo. And he has been a very consistent researcher on Indian economy. As a matter of fact, he did his PhD at JNU long time ago with Professor Prabhat Patnaik. So he's now, I think, which year was your PhD? In
1993.
Oh, 1993, yes. So he's an old India hand, if I could say, in Japan. So we feel he's one of us, and he's also planning to return to India next year for spending a year or two in Delhi for continuing his work on India. And I have invited him to spend some time at ISID, given his interest on industry and industrial development of India. So today he is going to present a paper on local supply conditions and automobile production in global value chains, evidence from factory level data in India. And many of my colleagues here work on this factory level data from ASI, which you have used. I'm sure they will be finding it very interesting. And then to join Professor Uchikawa, we have three distinguished experts to comment upon and bring some additional, elements and insights into the discussion, which include Professor Bishwanath Goldar, again, someone who is very well known to this audience of in-house and online. He has been working on industry for last I don't know how many years, and he has been working at Institute of Economic Growth principally, but he also advises Government of India, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation on issues concerning the industrial statistics. And then second, distinguished panelist we have today is Professor Vinish Kathuria, again an old friend, and he is at IIT Bombay, from where he's joining, where he's heading the Ashank Desai Center for Public Policy. Is that correct, Vinish?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Center for Policy Studies. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then the third distinguished panelist we have is Dr. Danish Hashim, who is a very senior official at CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, but he's by heart an academic as well, if I can say that, Danish. So he has deep interest in productivity and productivity related research, and currently he's heading the Ease of Doing Business and MNCs division at Confederation of Indian Industry. So with that introduction, and there's people in the room and many online, so I want to invite Professor Uchikawa to make his presentation before I turn to our distinguished panelists. Professor Goldar, when I was introducing you, I was not able to see you on the screen. But were you connected already?
No, I was connected. I was very much there.
Okay, excellent. So then over to you, Professor Uchikawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Director Professor Nagesh Kumar and the staff of ISID for giving me the opportunity to present my study today. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to three panelists, Professor Gordal, Professor Katuria, and Dr. Hassi. Now, without further ado, I'll begin my presentation. India's sustained economic growth since the economic reform has attracted an increasing number of multinational enterprises. Existing studies have shown that technology and knowledge have spilled over from multinational enterprise to their Indian suppliers. Professor Katuria has published several studies on this topic. However, participation in global value chain does not automatically lead to technological upgrading among local firms. Whether supplier can absorb and utilize external knowledge depends largely on their absorptive capacity and existing technological capability. According to technological capabilities approach, industrial upgrading results from deliberate investment in learning, skill formation, and organizational development rather than from simply participating in international markets. Let me begin by explaining the character of automobile industry. Automobile production is typically organized through multi-tier supplier network, in which large assemblers rely on a wide range of supporting industry. According to National Industrial Classification, the manufacturing of automobile components is not limited to the automobile industry, but also span various supporting industries, such as fabricated metal product and rubber and plastic product. The existing literature emphasizes the importance of inter-firm linkage and supplier capability for industrial upgrading and participation in global value chain. However, much less is known about how the broader regional supply base affects production outcome and technological upgrading. This study addresses this gap by examining whether the growth of supporting industry improve production outcomes in the automobile industry. Let me now introduce my research questions. Why do some regional benefit more from participation in global value chain than others? My research focuses on the role of collective learning within automobile industrial cluster in India. Industrial cluster facilitate interaction among firms, enabling the exchange of knowledge, skills, and production experience. As regional suppliers build collective capabilities, participation in global value chain is more likely to lead to industrial upgrading. Based on this idea, I hypothesize that regional supplier ecosystem improve manufacturing performance through three channels: knowledge diffusion, coordination efficiency, and sourcing flexibility. To examine this hypothesis, I focus on the automobile industry in India. I conducted factory survey in India's automobile clusters. The factory level interview revealed three main findings. First, repeated action between large automobile manufacturers and small and medium-sized factories facilitates the accumulation of production-related knowledge. Multinational enterprises frequently send their engineers to supplier factories, and Indian suppliers highly appreciate the technical advice and suggestion they receive. Second, geographical proximity appears to promote closer coordination between buyer and suppliers, enabling more frequent communication and smoother problem solving. For example, Maruti Suzuki India reports 88% of its suppliers are located within 100 kilometers of its manufacturing facilities. Third, a higher concentration of local suppliers seems to enhance sourcing flexibility. Multinational enterprises are constantly searching for new suppliers. One factory owner explained how his company entered the automobile industry. His company had originally been engaged in metal stamping. One day, an multinational enterprise visited his factory and asked whether it could supply automobile components. This opportunity enabled the company to become an auto component supplier. This study used factory-level microdata from the annual survey of industry covering 2008 to 2019. I obtained special permission from the National Statistical Office to access the microdata with factory identification code. In this study, small and medium-sized factories are defined as those employing between 100 and 299 workers, while factories employing 300 or more workers are classified as large. To address sample attrition in the ASI, I restrict the sample to factories with at least 5 consecutive years of observation. In the ASI, some factories disappear from survey in certain years and then reappear in later years. Restricting the sample in this way helps ensure a more consistent panel. The final data set consists of panel data for 469 large automobile factories. One limitation of the dataset is that detailed location information at the district level is not available in the ASI after 2010. The ASI provides data on item code and purchase value for major categories of domestically produced input. I convert these items code into industrial classification using the National Product Classification for the Manufacturing Sector 2011 and the National Industrial Classification 2008. Based on 3-digit industry classification, I identify 15 supporting industry. 2010, the general machinery industry and the iron and steel industry accounted for 40.8% and 23.5% of total domestic procurement, respectively. These figures indicate that supporting industry play a crucial role in the automobile industry. I construct supporting industry growth index using a shift share approach. The weights are based on the share of supporting industry in the domestic procurement of large automobile manufacturers using 2010 as base year. These weights are fixed at their 2010 level. Reduce concern about endogeneity arising from contemporaneous change in input composition. Sales growth is measured as the annual log difference in sales. That is, I subtract logarithm of sales in previous year from the logarithm of sales in current year. This measures approximates the annual percentage of growth rate. Next, let me explain how I construct the supporting industry growth index. The basic idea is straightforward. The index measures the growth of supporting industry in each state, weighted by their importance to automobile production. More specifically, I calculate the sales growth of each supporting industry and then take a weighted average using the industry share in the domestic procurement of automobile factory. The weights are fixed at their 2010 level. This means that engage in the index reflect growth in supporting industry rather than change in the procurement structure over time. Since some industries have missing observation, I calculate weighted average using only industry with available sales growth data. I construct the small medium factories growth index by demeaning the supporting industry growth index by year. Especially, I subtract annual average value of supporting industry growth index from each state's supporting industry growth index. As a result, the index captures whether supporting industry in a state are growing faster or slower than national average in a given year. Because the ASI does not provide direct information on supplier-buyer transactions, small and medium factories growth index should be interpreted as a proxy for regional supply side condition rather than as a direct measure of inter-firm linkage. This table presents descriptive statistics of the panel data. The sample consists of panel data on large automobile factories and the small and medium factories growth index. The working capital ratio is defined as current asset minus current liability divided by total asset. Export share is defined as a share of exports in total sales. Import share is defined as share of imported inputs in total procurement. This slide presents the baseline regression specification. The dependent variable is the annual sales growth of factory I, measured as the log difference in sales. The main explanatory variable is the small and medium factory growth index, which captures the growth of regional supplier ecosystem. I also include an interaction term between import ratio and small and medium factories growth index to examine whether the effect of regional supplier growth differ according to factories' dependence on imported input. The regression controls for several factory characteristics, including lagged sales, liquidity export intensity, import intensity, and capital labor ratio. Let me now turn to the estimation result. The fixed effect model with robust standard error provide two main findings. First, the coefficient on small and medium factory growth index is positive and statistically significant, suggesting that the expansion of supporting industry is associated with higher sales growth among large automobile manufacturers. Second, the coefficient on lagged sales is negative and statistically significant. However, because the model includes a lagged dependent variable, the fixed effect estimate may be subject to nickel bias. To address this issue, I also estimate the model using the system GMM estimator. The system GMM result shows that coefficient on small and medium factory growth index remain positive. However, it is no longer statistically significant when small and medium factories growth index is treated as predetermined variable. As a robustness check, I re-estimate the model using the level of sales instead of growth rate. The main findings are summarized in this table. The coefficient on lagged sales become positive. This difference mainly reflects the change in dependent variable, while the growth specification captures short-run adjustment in sales growth. The level specification captures persistence in sales level. The coefficient on small and medium factory growth index is positive and statistically significant. The results from system GMM are sensitive to instrument choice and model assumption, and are treated as supplementary rather than primary evidence. This table reports system GMM estimates under alternative assumption regarding the endogeneity of small and medium factories growth index and difference lag structure of the instrument set. All specifications use collapsed instruments to mitigate instrument proliferation. Column 1 to 3 correspond to level specification, while column 4 to 6 correspond to growth specification. Lagged sales are instrumented using its second lag. Small and medium factories growth index is treated as endogenous, predetermined, or exogenous, depending on the specification, and instrumented accordingly. The baseline analysis assumes that state-level aggregation captures relevant regional variation. However, industrial clusters often extend beyond administrative boundary like national capital region. I reconstruct the data set using three broader industrial clusters. The first group consists of Haryana, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. Second group consists of Gujarat and Maharashtra. Third group consists of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. This table reports the result using alternative spatial definition. The coefficient on small and medium factory growth index remain positive and statistically significant in the fixed effect specification. However, it is not statistically significant in the GMM specification. The positive association between supporting industry growth and automobile production is less robust when broader spatial units are used. To find heterogeneity across region, I divide the sample into state with industrial cluster and non-cluster state. The cluster states include Haryana, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. The coefficient on small and medium factory growth index is positive and statistically significant in both groups, but larger in cluster states. This pattern suggests that association between supporting industry growth and sales growth may be stronger in regions with more developed industrial cluster. Now, conclusion. This study uses small and medium factory growth index is supporting industry as a proximity for regional supply side conditions. The empirical result from the fixed effect model indicate a positive and statistically significant association between the growth of supporting industry and the sales growth of large automobile factories. This study highlights the importance of regional industrial structure in shaping production outcomes within global value chains. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Uchikawa, for presenting to us and sharing with us a very interesting paper. In particular, I find it very innovative that you constructed a small and medium factories growth index and supporting industry growth index, and as proxies for regional supply chain capabilities and conditions, cluster development, and all that. A very interesting and thoughtful analysis. So I'm sure our three key panelists will bring additional insights into this presentation that you have made. So let me turn to our first distinguished panelist, Professor Vishwanath Goldar, who has been working on industry, as I said earlier, for many, many years, and he's the leading expert on the subject. So over to you, Professor Goldar.
Hello, I have a presentation.
Yeah.
Loaded?
Yeah, it is being loaded. Yes.
First of all, I am
Yes.
very happy that I was invited to this session where Professor Uchikawa has presented an excellent and innovative paper. Next slide, please. Now, this is the core idea of the paper, that there are industrial clusters and there are collective capabilities. If that is done, it will help the user industry, the automobile industry, that is the. And here is the hypothesis that regional supplier ecosystems affect manufacturing performance through knowledge diffusion, coordination, efficiency, and sourcing. That is the essence. And his results show that this is borne out by the data. Next slide, please. Now, hypothesis is okay, but translating it to an empirics is really the challenging. And this is being done with the using the concept of supporting industry growth index, which I think this is the novelty of the paper or innovative part of the paper. and it uses, I don't have to cover these points, 2008 to 2019 and 469 large factories, and performance is being measured by sales growth. And the key variable is supporting industry index or small scale manufacturing that supporting industry small scale factories. And 15 industries are considered supporting, which are listed. It was there on the slide. Next slide, please. This is the equation that is estimated. If you would see, the dependent variable here is growth of sales. And the key variable here is SMFGI, which is the growth of the supporting industrial units of this relatively small and medium scale size. Now, this equation, whether you take delta log sales or you take log sales of T, actually it is the same equation, because you can easily turn the T minus 1 term from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, then it reduces to its second equation. And there is an issue of correlation between the lag dependent variable and error term, and hence GMM is needed. There is another reason why GMM is needed, because there is a possibility that if assemblers grow fast, which is the dependent variable, then they may create an inducement for the suppliers also to grow fast, which is the SMFGI. And on this ground also, GMM is needed. Also, SMFGI is lagged by 1 year, which also helps. But together, in any case, the results show a positive coefficient of SMFGI, and which supports the hypothesis. And that is, I think, the excellent portion of this paper, finding a very important, reaching a very important finding. Next slide, please. Now, what does SUPGI or SMFGI show? I could think of three interpretations. One interpretation is a high growth rate of supporting industries treated as an indicator of regional suppliers developing strong collective capabilities and thereby helping the large automobile firms. This is the interpretation of Professor Uchikawa. The second interpretation I could think is that, which is similar, that fast growth of supporting industries within a state are leading to agglomeration economies, and these economies are being passed on to the large automobile firms, thereby helping them. There's a third interpretation. High growth of supporting industries in a state more than the national level is only possible if the supporting industries are competitive, so that then their share in the economy will grow. And in this third interpretation will mean that this growth rate of SUPGI is a sign of their higher competitiveness. And because they are more competitive, they are helping the large automobile firms. There are all three interpretations possible. So I thought these are the way I think about them. Next slide, please. Now, one comment I have is that although the basic hypothesis is established by the results, but it will be good to strengthen the finding by using alternate measures of collective capability or competitiveness. So one possibility is to use total factor productivity of such enterprises in the state, say medium and small enterprises belonging to the supporting industries. What is their average total factor productivity? That could be computed by Levinson, Petrin, or other such methods, and this could have been the explanatory variables. And another possibility that I could think of is that one could consider all source factories and compute the product specification score, and taking an average of the product specific sophistication score, which will indicate whether they are producing more technologically advanced, because the word upgradation was used by Professor Uchikawa. This would be a direct sort of measure of upgradation of happening within that supporting industry, and PSS could be computed. Next slide. Now here the result is being used. PSS, actually I thought, why not show it, what will happen? So again, in this case, data for about 827 factories on automobile industries for the same period, from, I don't remember, 2011 to 19. And you will see PSS is the PSS product sophistication score. This has been computed by Rajesh, and is a paper by Rajesh and me. And you can see there's significant positive effect of this, showing that higher the product specific sophistication of the supporting industry, the greater is the growth rate of the automobile industry. Next slide, please. Since Professor Ruchikawa is used only small and medium, so I thought let's me confine only to the MSME units within the supporting industry. Even if that is done, there is a significant positive effect. But you will notice in the previous slide and the earlier in this slide, import intensity, export intensity here is a negative and insignificant. Earlier also import intensity was insignificant, export intensity was, I will focus more on export intensity. No effect of export intensity on growth was found. Next slide, please. Now, in the econometric results presented by Professor Ruchikawa, if you remember his results, the coefficient of export intensity is almost 0, and it was always statistically insignificant. These results indicate that among large automobile firms, higher export orientation is not associated with higher growth. The impact of import intensity was some places positive and significant, some places not. Again, no strong effect was found. So results earlier I showed in the 2 earlier slides, again the same result, that exports do not lead to faster growth in the automobile industry. Here are my results and Professor Ruchikawa's results are tallying. Next slide, please. Now, the question is, many studies find that exporting leads to productivity advance, which is known as learning by exporting. There are studies which find that GVC participation leads to productivity advance. It is also believed that higher export intensity will lead to higher growth because it will boost long-term growth because of expanding market size and fostering efficiency. But is there any empirical or econometric evidence that exporting boosts growth rate of firms? I tried a lot, could not find anything, and ultimately always Google was taking to my paper. This is my 2022 ISID working paper where using panel data with 3-digit industries, it was found that significant positive effect of exporting on output growth. But I could not find any paper on Indian industrial firms or international literature where there is a regression done and it has shown that exporting leads to faster growth or even GVC participation leads to faster growth. More research is needed. Next slide, please. Here in a theoretical framework, I want to show why should exporting or GVT participation should lead to faster growth. This is very well known. This is the Maris model, and the falling curve is called the growth of demand curve. After a stage, if you try to grow faster, your profit rate will fall. So that is the sort of limit why firms cannot grow to at very high rates. And the upper rising line is the growth rate of capital supply curve. The higher is your profit rate, more money you can mobilize to grow. So an equilibrium comes between the two curves, this is the equilibrium. And our thinking is that because of GVC, this growth of demand curve shift to the right and therefore equilibrium happens. It is so that medium or long-term growth occurs at a higher growth rate. But notice the results of Professor Ruchikawa and the results I showed, we did not find any positive effect of export or actually GVC participation on the our growth of output. So this type of shift, which is only theoretical, it actually never happens. Next slide, please. So I said maybe this is happening only in the automobile, maybe in other industries, exports lead to growth. So this regression is estimated. Log of sales regressed on last year's sales and export intensity and import. It's a very simple equation. Many people in ISID or elsewhere who are attending online have this data from Praves and they can always estimate it. And what is beta 3? Beta 3 is the coefficient of export. I tried it in various forms. In no case beta 3 was positive. Positive or significant. So from these results, it appears that exports having a positive effect on growth is a view or impression or idea we carry, but there is very little econometric evidence in support of that. Next slide, please. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Goldar. I think I must really thank you for very insightful and detailed comments. I'm sure Professor Ruchikawa has benefited from that, and I'll invite him to respond. But maybe we first listen to our all the three commentators. So next on my list is Professor Vinish Kathuria.
Yeah,
And yeah.
I would like
So
to share my PPT, but can it?
you don't have to.
No, I would like to share because
Okay.
if it
You
is,
have, then it would be
can
loaded.
you allow the sharing?
Yeah,
Then
yeah. Somebody is working on loading it.
yeah, now I can see. Yeah.
Is- Yeah. Put it in presentation mode.
Yeah, can you see the presentation mode?
Yeah. Now.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, I'm extremely thankful to ISID for giving me this opportunity to speak on this, and a very interesting presentation and a paper by Professor Uchikawa. So I was thinking that this will be, I think most of the points have been covered by Professor Goldar already, but I was thinking that this will be more attuned to JVC or GVC, because in the last 2.5 decades, a lot of work has undergone in India and elsewhere, which has looked into GVC or global supply chains, and that has been facilitated by information and transportation technologies and declining in the trade barriers. So now the firms can unbundle production into tasks performed at different locations to take advantage of different factor costs. So that everyone knows that. And such production fragmentation means that intermediate goods and services cross borders several times along the chain and often passes through many countries more than once. And a recent OECD study has found that 70% of this 2024 that GVC account for nearly 70% of the trade. Now, I wanted to see the study, Professor Uchikawa, from this angle, but then when I read it, then it was a little different. And he has looked into why some regions benefit more from GVC participation than others. And his central premise is that industrial cluster could be the answer, because the industrial cluster facilitate interaction among firms and through exchange of knowledge, skills, and production experience, and which is similar to what Professor Goldar also mentioned. One explanation of this could be agglomeration, and which is in the new economic geography has been highlighted a lot. So now the research question was, how does regional supplier ecosystem affect manufacturing performance of Indian automobile industry through knowledge diffusion, coordination efficiency, and sourcing flexibility? And I think this is a recap of what Professor Goldar has mentioned and what has been presented. ASI data from 2008 to 19. Only thing is, part of this is a census sector where more than 300 workers are there, and part of this is sample sector. And then this limitation has been highlighted by Professor Uchikawa also. And 15 supporting industries: rubber products, plastic, general machinery, and special purpose machinery. And 2 index were calculated. One is supporting industry growth index. Using that, small and medium factories growth index has been computed, which means that detrending supporting industry growth index, and then it has been computed. And eventually the paper tries to find out how this small and medium factories growth index affects sales of the firms to whom they are, large firms whom they are supplying. And then estimation started basically with fixed effect model. And then there is a endogeneity problem. So went for GMM and then dynamic GMM basically. And then to strengthen the findings or telling that the clusters are more important, separate analysis has been done for 3 auto clusters. Now, again, as I mentioned, I was thinking it is more about GVC, but it is not. It is manufacturing of automobile. From that angle, it has been studied. And GVC has design, manufacturing of parts and assembly spread of multiple locations and much broader. So only manufacturing of parts can be spread to multiple countries, but not design hardly spread out to multiple countries. And also assembly happens only at one location. So which means that is the manufacturing of parts, which is truly considered to be GVC. Now, in the PPT, I think there was no definition of what is automobile industry. Because there are 3 key segments: passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, 2 and 3 dwellers. So whether all three were included or only passenger vehicles or commercial vehicles. So that also, I think in the paper it may be there, but not in the PPT which has been circulated. So is this really a GVC study or productivity gains in a cluster? So I was just questioning this. So because it primarily talks about inter-industry spillovers from auto cluster, how does it benefit the firms, original equipment manufacturers or large firms basically? And again, why did the study stop at 2019? Because now we are in 2026 and ASI data is available for later period also. And what is the GVC contribution of the cluster in 2008, 2019? I mean, some comparative figure would have been more useful to say that this is really relevant. This now study uses 15 supporting industries and NPCMS classification has been used, product classification has been used. So I was just thinking, suppose we use input-output table. So will it give better results than if you simply use NPCMS? Now, some of the industries like domestic appliances, general purpose machinery or special purpose machinery, I was just wondering how is the connection with automobile, especially domestic appliances, and some of the key industries which should have been there. As of now, they were not there, like textile and leather industry, say floor covering, seat covers, interior trims, seat belts, airbags, etc. So they come under textile and leather industry. So that should also be supporting industry. Then glass industry, which was missing, I think, or windshields, windows, mirrors. Again, that should also be part of the supporting industries. And off late, I think to reduce the vehicle or to improve vehicle efficiency and reduce manufacturing cost, lot of original equipment manufacturers are going for lightweight polymer materials. Now, is there any specific supporting industry for that also or not? And now, geographical proximity, what has been mentioned in the PPT and what Professor Uchikawa mentioned, associated with closer coordination between buyers and suppliers. Suppose there are manufacturers also in those locations. So what is going to happen then? Because there's no discussion about geographical proximity of manufacturers. So that may also influence the sales of the other firms. Like this is a true intra-industry spillovers kind of a thing. Then production outcomes influenced by sourcing flexibility. Does that mean that each OEM has many suppliers for the same items? Now, the moment you bring many suppliers, then again, it will have implication on the transition cost of having these multiple suppliers. So they have to go for upfront contracts with all of them. And the products needs to be standardized and ensuring the same quality. Now, which will automatically increase the transition cost of when you go for this kind of arrangement. Now, again, one thing which I found which was not discussed at all, what is the role of different policies in GVC or in automobile manufacturing, etc. If you see, we had a scheme like faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, FAME. FAME phase 1 very much falls within the scope of this time period of this study. FAME 2 may not be falling, but there is no discussion on that. Now, suppose, assuming the results are interesting, and what is the policy implication? So we were thinking that there will be some I think discussion on that implication of this study. Professor Goldar has already mentioned that exports and GVC, they are not going hand in hand, or growth of the firm, it is not going hand in hand basically. And now, is the plant level data or factory level data appropriate for this kind of study? So I was just thinking, because if you see that export or be part of GVC is at the decision of a firm, not at the plant level. And firms have rationalized production of different plants because they engage in some plants for local sales and some for exports. And two interesting examples we have. Maruti Suzuki uses Gurgaon and Manesar plant for local market. So it means their supplier will be a little different. And Hansalpur for exports, their supplier may be a little different. So whether this kind of analysis can be replicated only for those plants which are, or only for those original equipment manufacturers who are going for exporting. Similarly, Ashok Leyland, Ennore plant is for domestic sales, but Hosur is for exports. Now, again, some cross tabulation I was looking for in the paper, but that what is the share of GVC of these plants vis-a-vis India's automobile GVC share? Is there any change in GVC share over time? And does the share differ across ownership? Because there is no discussion of foreign versus domestic owners ownership, because that has an important implication. So the kind of suppliers you will have if you are a local firm, domestic firm, say Tata will have a different kind of supplier, then Hyundai will have a different kind of suppliers. But some differences in their behavior in terms of growth we can see basically. And then what kind of market structure has been assumed for these supplier plants. So the moment you say that they are supplying to a particular OEM, which means that it is mostly a monopolistic competition, not a monopoly competition. And again, just a small clarificatory, what does negative value of the index imply? I mean, and what should be the ideal value for of this SMFGI? And I think there are some interesting references, I think, which will be useful. There is one powering India's participation in GVC, last year, Niti Aayog came up with the report. And there is very interesting World Bank study also that also has looked into some of these aspects. Yeah, so these are the few things I wanted to share. Yeah.
Thank
very
you,
much.
Vinish.
Yeah.
Very helpful, very insightful comments. On top of Professor Golda's comments, you have added some more, and I'm sure Professor Ushikawa will keep them in mind in his revision and will respond to you. But let us first turn to Dr. Danish Hasim. I already introduced him, although he works at CII in a very senior position, but he is at heart an academic, and we continue to have academic discussions whenever we meet. So, Danish, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also for inviting me for this very vibrant discussion. And thank you, Professor Uchikawa. It's a wonderful presentation, and I like going through the slides that you presented. And you have actually raised one of the very important points that is being discussed. Vinish mentioned about Niti Aayog study. Last year, they came out with a study, and they actually emphasized the role of clusters in developing the global value chain. And so from that perspective, I think you have touched upon a very important subject. What Niti Aayog could not do was that they actually mentioned about this report in the context of cost disability. And they mentioned that, raw materials itself is a cost disability for India to the extent of something like more than 9%. And then other 1.5 or something they attributed to taxation, this thing, this is called, depreciation, tax depreciation. So having said this, so they also mentioned about developing a complete ecosystem, and you very rightly emphasized the need for developing a or proper ecosystem or supplier ecosystem. So within the supplier ecosystem, what they perhaps did not mention so exclusively was your knowledge sharing or knowledge diffusion or your coordination, and of course, sourcing flexibility. So these are the three very important points you have raised. And what they could also not do was that they could not actually, do it in terms of empirical measures. How it affected. They only qualitatively mentioned that there's a need for developing clusters, and that will actually help in increasing our GVC participation. But you have very well actually quantified this, and you have actually raised a very, you have started a very good discussion. Because, unless we develop the good ecosystem, integrating into supply chain vertically as well as horizontally, like China has done, there is not much we can do. So having said this, now I would also like to have some clarificatory questions. In fact, most of them have already been covered, but I would still raise it from my point of view. One is that, these are some clarificatory, the thing you may respond to it now or maybe later, and some of them may sound repetitive. One is about your measure of output. So I was just thinking, like Professor Goldar also pointed out, that when you talk about GVC, what is important is GVC is a direct function of competitiveness. And when you are talking about competitiveness, it is not the scale of output that would matter. It is what would matter is productivity or efficiency or any measure of efficiency. So on the left hand side, if you would have taken some efficiency indicator like Professor Goldar also mentioned, TFP or something, that would have been more closely associated with GVC rather than sales, just without any ratio. This was one. Secondly, your sales on the left hand side, and then your indicator, what you call as SMFGI. So I am again not very convinced, because in India what happens is that demand for automobiles is highly inelastic, and as a result, what happens is that even if the petrol prices rise, there may not be much impact. And then there may be suppose surge in demand all of a suddenly for some reason. Say even if there is a good monsoon here in India, that actually sometimes influences demand. So what eventually happens is that so left hand side variable, that is dependent variable, may increase without having any response on your supplier side, this thing. So this may create a sort of bias. That's what I feel, that sale may increase without any commensurate increase in on the variable on the right hand side. So this was two. Thirdly, I would like to touch upon two-way relationship. One, you are saying that supplier ecosystem would have a positive impact on sales. Absolutely no doubt about it. But there is for the sake of econometric testing, there may also be a reverse relationship, in the sense that one big firm comes and they start enhancing their output, and that actually leads to development of supplier ecosystem. So can we do some sort of grandeur causality and just try to see what is the kind of two-way relationship here, and just to say that it is definitely related in one way. That is point number 3. And then I go to point number 4, that you mentioned about capital labor ratio. So what it essentially indicates is that when you increase the intensity of capital, what usually happens when you are increasing the intensity of capital, there is also an increase in the size of, say, factory. So does your fixed effect model account for the size of the factory? Because when you increase the size of factory, you do expect increase in efficiency and therefore increase in sale. So this is, and interestingly, you are getting 0 K by L ratio. That is another something very surprising. Why should it be 0? I mean, if it has to be 0, why should it not have been dropped out of the model? This is my question. But I still believe that K by L ratio, why it is 0, I'm really puzzled. Another factor I come back to is that you mentioned about GVC relationship with the clusters, supply ecosystem. I also had at some point of time estimated GVC for automobile sector, and that was for period 2023 to 2020. And at that time, what I found, it's unpublished work, what I found that the backward linkages in automobile sector, that was falling. So if there is a positive development on clusters front, then what explains fall in backward linkages? So what now I understand is that backward, since you had a restriction in terms of availability of imports, then that could have also led to, say, flourishing of your development of ecosystem within the country, and that could have actually led to higher growth. That could be a possibility. That's for your further thought. And another important thing about this is that we have to actually think about developing backward linkages. Like, for example, what happened in our case in India, it is somewhere around 25, and if you compare it with, say, Vietnam, it pushed it from a level of 22 to now 55. So backward linkages in India is very important, and that itself will actually influence what you call the development of supplier ecosystem. That is again very important, and that will actually lead to overall competitiveness. That's another factor that we should take into account. Another suggestion that I have way of this thing is that instead of keeping these variables, because to me, backward linkages, forward linkages, and your cluster, all three are important determinants for GVC. So what I would suggest, you keep these variables on the right hand side, and on the left hand side you have total factor productivity, and what you will essentially measure is that all these three will influence your global value chain integration. So you may just think about it, and that way you'll be able to separate out the effects of all these three separately. If that actually helps. And another point I would like to make is that now we are increasingly shifting towards electrical vehicles. Somewhere India is not doing good at all. Like our share in global exports is only 0.2 to 0.4%, not even 0.4, 0.04 to 0.02. That is very, very low. And your study is important because it mentions about developing the supplier ecosystem. I think one of the reasons why we are not able to do well in electrical vehicles is that we do not have a proper supply ecosystem. And that's where we have to work on, like, for example, developing the right from the core, say, critical minerals down to, say, all other those things that are required in making of batteries and all that. So first we develop, and then probably we'll have assemblers, more of imports of certain technology and all that, and that would lead to our integration in value chain. So these were some of the important thoughts that I had on this very innovative paper. And yeah, so that's all from my side at the moment. Thank you so much for your patience here. Thank you.
Thank you, Danish, for adding to a very insightful discussion that we are having on this paper. Now, I would like to open the discussion to general, or you want to respond first, or you want to do it all together?
Okay, first, okay, I respond.
Okay. So, Professor Ushikawa wants to respond to the distinguished commentators.
Yeah.
We'll open the floor a little later after his first round of responses. Professor Kulshrestha, yeah, I have noted. We'll give you the floor. Yeah. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. Professor Katuria rightly point out why my paper is related with ZVC. The answer is the share of export in automobile industry sales is very, very low. So export industry does not reflect in sales growth and maybe TFP and other things. So Professor Gorda rightly point out export intensity it does not reflect in Indian automobile industry. That's true. India automobile industry invited many multinational enterprises to India, but they are not using global value chain efficiently. Some company imports product from other countries, but the share is very, very less. And so in my papers, dependent variable is only sales. So Professor Goldar and Dr. Hashim suggested introduce other dependent variable. Yes, I'll try. And yes, Dr. Hashim pointed out capital labor ratio. Why I introduced these factors. Yes, the result is almost zero. So I should remove this capital labor ratio. And ah, uh, Professor Katuria asked why up to 2019. The reason is very simple. I got data up to 2016. I could get microdata with identification code up to 2019. So after that, I couldn't get. I'll try. Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Professor Uchikawa. Now I want to open the floor to anyone who wants to bring additional insights. So I see one hand on the screen, Dr. Kulshrestha. So maybe you go first, Dr. Kulshrestha. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me a chance.
Abhinav Surya.
I was at SEAP, which shares the building of IDE. And I guess Professor Uchikawa and we used to share the same canteen. So I think we have met a couple of times, but anyway, it's a long time. To coming to the point, I'm sure that Dr. Uchikawa must have got a lot of difficulties in getting to the data because the data from ASI is available to you, but the supplying industry is not necessarily in the ASI, could be in the, outside the ASI sector, and he must have had a lot of problems. And even the data which is available in the small scale sector is not annual data. So a lot of things must have troubled him, and I think the way he got the data by asking questions, conducting a survey must have helped him. So that was my one point. Here a corollary is that Professor Uchikawa is taking only one cycle, that is the industry which is producing automobile, and who are the supplying industries, and what are they learning, and how are they interacting, and how are they improving. There is another point, the supplying industries also have a unit where they get the material from another supplying unit. So that second stage is missing. So maybe in some future study, you may like to see that point also. My another point is that that you must have taken when you are taking this the input, that is the material supplied by the another industry to the main industry, which we are considering the automobile. There are a lot of stocks in position, and so therefore the amount which you have taken, I am sure you must have adjusted for the stocks. Many times in my experience preparing input output table and other things, stocks created a lot of problems. And stock data is available in the ASI, but not available in the small scale industries or as well.
Right.
So these are some of the problems which we take. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see another hand on the screen, Abhinav Surya. So go ahead, please. And then we have some colleagues from within RIS, ISID to raise your hand. So go ahead, Abhinav. Oh,
Sir, I have mentioned my question in the chat, so it's a slightly longer question. So my basic doubt is, since automobile OEMs can always substitute domestic procurement for either in-house production or imports, so shouldn't the causality be in the opposite direction? Shouldn't you ask like whether OEM sales or like the growth in OEM sales is helping the growth of local production systems, instead of asking whether growth of local production systems leads to greater OEM sales? So that is my primary question.
all right. Akhilesh?
It was really interesting presentation. But I have one small clarification. You are defining small and medium enterprises as active that number of workers less than 3. But even in the World Bank, also and the international organization, they are defining small and medium enterprises. The workers range is 5 to 19 for small enterprises and 20 to 99. It is below 100.
Mhm.
I have doubt and I wonder that whether the result will be the same who are fitting the more than 100 forms as a large and less than 100 as a small and medium.
Mm.
Then whether the result will be the same or different.
Anybody else? Yes, go ahead. You can speak in the microphone.
Hello. I wanted to ask,
Please
like,
introduce yourself.
my name is Saad bin Aslam. I am second year PhD student at the School of Public Policy, IIT Delhi. My question is that when local supplies were developed in India in the previous year, it was followed through follow design. They adopted two methods: follow design and follow source. So whether this was considered in your study, or how did you take up into this thing into consideration? Like, because follow design, there was no autonomy to local suppliers when followed, and in follow sourcing also, it was not the Indian industries which were developed. Instead, it was the foreigners which established manufacturing plants in India. So there was any consideration in that in your state?
All right. Anybody else? Yes, Isha.
I have a small question. Is it possible to know the governance framework between buyers and suppliers in different regions and how that impacts your outcome variable?
Anybody else? If none, then over to you.
Yes. Okay. First, ASI data has some limitations. If factory employee worker less than 100, it belongs to sample sector. So I cannot collect these data properly. That's why I defined SME factories employing between 100 to 300. And some labor regulation covered. Also, particularly some if a factory want to retrench workers, in that case, they need permission from government if they employ more than 100, and in some 300. That's why I define SME factories between 100 and 300. That is one reason. And okay, multinational enterprise, they make design and just give to suppliers. But even supplier get the design, they cannot produce properly. Some interaction is need, and then they learn something and they improve efficiency. So design itself, okay, is important, but that is only some part of technology, not all. So I want to see more wider prospect of technology. And yeah, okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Professor Uchikawa, for visiting us and sharing your very insightful paper, very innovative paper, bringing in new index to capture the strength of ecosystem or cluster ecosystem, which can be sort of supporting the growth of industry, and you found empirical evidence in support of that. So this was very interesting. And then on top of that, we got very interesting insights from our three panelists and others who participated in the discussion. So Professor Goldar brought in the whether this, besides the stronger capabilities, the agglomeration economies or competitiveness could be the factors. And he also shared his results about the export to sales growth kind of relationship not being empirically confirmed. And this is very curious, actually, because all of us try to argue that export growth is the exporting is the major engine of growth for many companies. Why it is not giving results supporting that is a curious thing. Probably in India, firms do not get driven by exports. They believe in the strength of domestic market more than the exports, and that is why our export to sales ratio or the export intensity has not been only low but all declining over the years. So that may be also one issue, but very insightful comments. And similarly, Vinish questioned and brought some additional elements, and also the policy implications, importance of policy implications of these very interesting results should be highlighted. And Danish similarly talked of the importance of ecosystem, both vertical and horizontal, and also he's supported the possible use of TFP to capture efficiency of these suppliers, and also highlighted the possibility of a two-way causality between these smaller firms and the larger firms. It could be both ways. And then in the comments from the audience, also you got some interesting observations, including on the definitions of what should be the cutoff for small scale industry. And there are some comments on the screen. They're coming in the chat box, so we will share them with you, and you can make use of. So I want to really close this very interesting seminar, and let us give a big round of applause to the speaker and the three panelists and all of you who participated in the discussion. So thank you very much for joining, Danish, Vinish, and Professor Goldar, and Dr. Kulshrestha and others
Thank
from
you very
Syria.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Goldar. Very interesting comment.